All right, everybody. Thank you for being patient. Finally ready to start tonight's hangout. Gonna be talking about the NFL draft. It finally happened. It sucked that we had to wait till May for everything to happen, but it was very eventful 3 days to say the least. We're joined tonight by Radio One's own Lauren Beasley. What's going on, Lauren?
Nothing much, man. Just enjoying this wonderful time in the month of May, which happens to be my birthday month. So enjoying it.
All right, so not only is it's a birthday month, we got the NBA playoffs. So are you the reason that they moved the draft back into May? So should I take that issue up with you?
As far as I know, I have nothing to do with it. If I did, I would like to think I'd be hired, probably coaching one of these teams, like my very own Detroit Lions. So I'm gonna go. No, I'm not the reason. So no, yeah, I'm just gonna stick with that.
All right, I guess we'll let you get away with just a simple no. All right, so you already brought up your lines. We're gonna get to them in just a little bit. What we're doing tonight, we're not doing grades or anything like that. We're just gonna take a chance to just go over each team's draft haul and just discuss it a little bit to tell you fans what you should be excited about. We're gonna start off with the Arizona Cardinals. They had a pretty darn good draft. They took Deion Buchanan in the first round. Troy Nicholas, a tight end out of Notre Dame, in the second. In the third round, they pick up a defensive end out of North Carolina, Mr. Kareem Martin. In the third round, Pittsburgh State, Mr. John Brown, dynamic kick returner. Logan Thomas, Twitter almost broke when that pick was announced. Ed Stinson from Alabama. I guess, it can't hurt whether you get a lot of playing time in Alabama or not. If you play on the defensive side of the ball, you're probably going to be drafted. In the sixth round, their final pick was Walt Powell, 5'11" wide receiver out of Murray State. So Lauren, when you heard me go through the Arizona Cardinals and their draft haul, what are some of the names that stood out to you?
Well, one of the things that I definitely liked was that first round pick with the 27th pick, Deion Buchanan. The Cardinals basically upgraded the talent in their secondary right along with that pick of Deion Buchanan. And you group him with guys like Antonio Cromartie, Honey Badger, and then obviously Patrick Peterson. You're looking at an Arizona defense that is looking to become elite, and they just got better on the back end. I feel like the defensive line got better with the two solid picks that they had in Ed Stinson and Kareem Martin. Two of the best run defenders, I think, probably in this draft class. And then Logan Thomas, this is a good time to just really test him as far as throwing the ball. If he does work out there, this is going to be a good weapon for the Arizona Cardinals moving forward because he is highly athletic. But at the same time, if it doesn't work out, it's not necessarily a lost cause. It's just somebody didn't work out. So I like the picks that they made, and I think Walt Powell is an underrated kid out of Murray State who can actually end up being a pretty solid weapon for the Cardinals if you develop him right.
Yeah, and just to piggyback on the Logan Thomas thing, it's almost like it's a luxury. Like you said, if it doesn't work out, it was just a fourth-round pick. Nobody's expecting it to work out. Now, if it does work out, low risk, very high reward. The other bonus that he has, much like Colin Kaepernick, they got to come in and just, get to work behind closed doors. No pressure. No one was worried about what you were doing in your free time. Alex Smith was a starter at that time, so they got to rework everything about your game and get you. It's like an extra year of college almost. You got the red shirt. Get a year just to really fine tune your skills and figure out how they're going to translate to the NFL with NFL coaches versus your college coaches. The other thing is it can't hurt that in this division with these defenses. All these quarterbacks need to have big arms. It's going to take big plays to beat these high-powered defenses. And one of the luxuries that Logan Thomas has, he probably has two of the better wide receivers in the whole division in terms of a duo, and Mr. Fitzgerald and young Floyd. So that's definitely a good look. But I really love their draft. You talked about their secondary. You kind of skipped over the Antonio Cromartie part. Antonio Cromartie is your number 2 corner. Your life is pretty darn good in Arizona.
Oh, absolutely. I didn't mean to skip over. I just wanted to give everybody a idea of who's already in that secondary. And then adding the Deion Buchanan is huge, and I think that's again the really big thing. Like you said, Antonio Cromartie is your number 2 guy. It doesn't get any better, and then to have the young honey badger back there who you can count on, who hopefully will be fully healthy and be able to stay fully healthy. Then you add that obviously now with Deion Buchanan. Like I said, this secondary just got truly more talented and truly more elite. It's just about all these guys stepping up their game and playing well together. But I mean, that's going to be an elite passing defense again if majority of them stay healthy and if they work well together.
All right, on to the Atlanta Falcons. As you can see, it's not a division thing. We're just going in old-fashioned alphabetical order to make this nice and easy for us. All right, in the first round, they finally addressed a big-time need, the offensive line. They take Jake Matthews out of Texas A&M. It's definitely a great look. I don't think there's anything wrong when you take a Matthews at any position. The bloodlines are pretty darn good there. In round 2, they took Rashid Hageman. Another thing that the Falcons had to do, they've been kind of seen as a finesse team since Matt Ryan's been there, and the first thing they did was address both sides of the line of scrimmage. So I commend them on that. They also picked up Desmond Seward, free safety from Wisconsin, in the 3rd round. Devontae Freeman out of Florida State, a very talented running back. But Florida State was loaded. It's not like he had a lot of carries on him. You're getting a really fresh kid. Also in the 4th, Prince Shimbo, outside linebacker. Ricardo Allen in the 5th round. Marquise Sprill, inside linebacker, also in the 5th round. In the 7th round, it's actually surprising. I think this is one of the few teams where your 7th round picks probably will not only make your 53, but maybe even contribute in year 1. They took Yarwin Smallwood out of UConn, outside linebacker, and the last pick was Tyler Starr out of South Dakota, another outside linebacker. So what did you think about the Falcons draft?
I think the Falcons made a point to really get stronger, bigger, and definitely more talented, mainly on the offensive and defensive line. Obviously, like you said, you can't really go wrong with the Matthews, so they went and got offensive tackle Jake Matthews. So that's a guy right there who should be able to slide right in, hopefully, and have an immediate impact and protect Matt Ryan's blind side for the next, hopefully, he can stay healthy the next half of the decade. And then on defense, I like the fact that they went and got some hybrid linemen like Rashid Hageman, who I do feel, again, is that hybrid lineman who has the versatility and can handle the changes in scheme. And I even like the pickup of going to get Wisconsin safety Desmond Southward. He's an excellent athlete who can move around in a few different roles, but at the same time, he's replacing the recently departed Thomas DeCow, so I like that move. And again, going back to the linebacker position, going to get the Notre Dame outside linebacker, Prince Shimbo. He's an interesting versatility guy because of his developing factor as a pass rusher. So I really just want to see how he's going to develop. But like you said, even Yaylon Smallwood and Tyler Starr have that possibility not only to make this team, obviously, even though they were picked in the 7th round, but to also contribute early. It's just seeing them where Atlanta wants to go with this so-called new hybrid defense. Because like I said, a lot of the linebackers they picked were a little bit more hybrid maybe than we've seen them go for in the past.
Right. I love their draft. We already knew that they could score the ball. They focus on the part of football that they struggled mightily with. They've really struggled to stop people, and you need to do so. You got people like the Saints that are just loading up on both sides of the ball. A lot of those same teams that are in contention the past couple of years, they haven't gone anywhere. And not only that, now you have some of those other teams that were, cellar dwellers getting better. You had to improve. This was a year that you couldn't just stand pat and go, well, we're going to just continue to outscore people. It's not going to work. Let's just be honest. Yeah, it's a passing league, but it's not going to work. Eventually, you're going to have to stop somebody. You're going to have to run the football. At one point, eventually, it's going to have to happen. You might get away with it for 13 weeks, 14 weeks. I promise you, come postseason, no. Things are gonna change, and we've seen that for many of these so-called high-powered offenses. Over the course of the regular season.
Absolutely. I'm a firm believer in defense wins championships. So like you said, having an offense is amazing. And it's great that you can count on an offense, but at the same time, it's always very, very important that you have that defense who you can count on to slow down the run or to stop the pass, especially, again, as you mentioned, since this is changing more into a passing league. And eventually it'll change again. We'll become more of a running league, and so on and so forth. But again, I'm a firm believer in defense wins championships, and it's nice to see teams starting to realize that more and more, not only adding that depth and that talent to the offense, but also to the defense.
Right, and speaking of defense wins championships, one of those teams that won a championship very, just only a season removed from it, the Baltimore Ravens. Seems like everybody forgot about them. Last year was their transition year, kind of just really went through it. Well, they're one of those teams we've known for years that they really draft well, and they made sure that they weren't going to stay bad for long. If you want to talk about, I don't know if you want to call it luck or just happenstance or just a great taking advantage of opportunities. But let's just go over their draft, which was just absolutely remarkable. In the first round, they got obviously the most highly touted inside backer in the draft, Mr. C.J. Mosley. He's already comfortable in the 3-4. It's a wonderful fit. In round 2, they follow it up with Timmy Jernigan. He's just a national champion, and also 6'2", 300 pounds. There's nothing ever wrong, to get a nose tackle to 3-4, kind of a big thing. And they went and got Jernigan's teammate and Terrence Brooks to add a young Matt Elam on the back end of their defense, which I love. They got another tight end to provide some depth in Crockett Gilmore. Brent Urban, another defensive tackle. Lorenzo Taliaferro, big physical running back. Yeah, he went to a small school, but 6', 230 is not a bad thing to have in your backfield. They also picked up John Urschel, offensive guard from Penn State. Keith Winning, a quarterback out of Ball State. And then Mike Campanero, dynamic slot receiver from Wake Forest. What did you think about Ozzie Newsome and the Ravens and what they got done in this year's draft?
The main thing I first always again like about Baltimore is they're at least from what I've seen last few years, they're very smart drafters. Again, went from strict talent and value perspective, and they went and filled up that defense. Went and got C.J. Mosley, who I feel if he's healthy could obviously be a defensive player of the year front runner and definitely rookie possibly of the year as well. Again, building up that defense. Went and got Timmy Jernigan, who, unbelievably failed to pick 48. Went and got, as you called it, younger Matt Elam, if you will, and Terrence Brooks at safety. And again, I really like how they're taking care of the offensive needs. We know Baltimore knows how to draft for the defense. C.J. Mosley, prototypical Ravens linebacker. He fits their rangy inside linebacker perfectly, especially in that 3-4 system. Again, going to get Timmy Jernigan and Terrence Brooks. We know that they know defense like the back of their hand, but to go see them even go fill out that depth chart offensively with some nice late-round additions. As you mentioned, going to get Lorenzo Taliaferro, who I feel, again, just like you said, maybe from a small school, but a powerful impact-type running back who could ultimately, if you give him an opportunity, take the place of Ray Rice, who has been inconsistent and who is also going through some off-the-field issues. Again, going to get a quarterback like Keith Winning, who you can develop and say, hey, learn from Joe Flacco. Learn while you're here. We want to develop you. You may be our number 2, and we'll use you as trade bait later. But at the same time, if Flacco is not here, if Flacco gets hurt, whatever the case may be, we're developing you. And even going to get Mike Campanero from Wake Forest. Again, a nice, solid guy out of Wake Forest who can be a number 3 or number 4 and eventually develop into an even better player for you. So I like what they did defensively, but again, defensively is not a shot. It was more so I was impressed with how they're improving their offense in the areas that they need to, which is, again, at that running back position, as well as making sure that Joe Flacco has consistent weapons to throw to.
Right. I think you hit the nail on the head. They really took care of both sides of the ball as they needed to. And I think, obviously C.J. Mosley is not going to be Ray Lewis, but it is a huge step in the right direction to have a young guy in the middle of your defense for the years to come. It was huge for them. On to the Buffalo Bills, who made some noise. Some people weren't happy with what they did. Other people were very happy about their moves. The only thing I can say is that they were aggressive, and if you're aggressive and you show conviction, I really can't take fault with it. I can't get mad at them for what they decided to do. They decided E.J. Manuel was their quarterback of the future last year when they took him. They decided this time we're going to give E.J. weapons. They went and got I can't really say the best wide receiver in the draft. Is it fair to say the most highly touted wide receiver in the draft? Is that fair?
That's fair.
It's Sammy Watkins. But they got it. Yeah, they got Sammy Watkins to add to EJ Manuel, who's, for all the things EJ Manuel is or isn't, the one thing he does have is a huge arm. Then they picked up Cyrus Kouandjio, offensive tackle from Alabama. What's the next best thing for your quarterback after you get him weapons? You got to keep him upright. Then they went to attack that defense. Preston Brown from Louisville took Ross Cockrell from Duke. And yeah, that sounds weird. We're talking about football and Duke players, but this is not your same old Duke football. This is a lot different now. Then they addressed the offensive line a little bit more. You took Cyril Richardson from Baylor. I thought was a really good pick. In the 7th round, you took Randall Johnson, outside linebacker from FAU. Get a chance if it pans out. Great. If it doesn't, it's okay. You still got Nigel Bradenham out there, Kiko Alonso. And then the last pick, they took Chantrell Henderson. Always mess up his name. The big, physically gifted. God bless that kid with a lot of ability. It's just all mental for him and him taking advantage of the opportunity. And think about that. They took a 7th round flyer. We talked a little earlier about low risk, really high reward. Chantrell Henderson definitely applies to that.
Absolutely. I think the thing that with Buffalo, like you said, some people liked the draft, some people didn't. I think the biggest thing with me was just, that they paid a pretty steep price to go up and get Sammy Watkins. And I understand why they did it. Like you said, EJ Manuel is their guy, and their whole thing is EJ really didn't have weapons we felt this year. But at the same time, going to get a Sammy Watkins is great. But I think the main thing I look back at was what they did in the offseason. They traded earlier for ex-Buck wide receiver Mike Williams. And then they sent Philadelphia draft choice for running back Bryce Brown. So, again, I get what they're trying to do, and if it pays off, all these moves turn out to be great. Going to get Sammy Watkins, going to trade earlier in the offseason for ex-Bucks wide receiver Mike Williams, and going to trade for Bryce Brown. They all make good choices if it works out. I think the biggest thing is kind of what we talked about was the offensive line. That was really, to me, where the big risk came along, was because we know as much as you need weapons, you also need to be able to make sure that your quarterback is protected. And while you did take some guys like Cyrus Kouandjio, Chantrell Henderson, and Cyril Richardson, some people feel like, and after looking back at their film, and I get where some people are coming from, some people kind of feel there may be a little bit a roll of the dice, because a lot of these guys, it's a little bit more mental, or it's about being more disciplined or getting better technique. And depending on how Buffalo develops these guys and how these guys respond to the development and to the level of football is going to determine how these guys do. And I think that's the other area that I'm kind of watching, more so those roll of the dice picks that they had at the offensive line.
Right, and like you said, they did roll the dice a little bit. If it works, everything's cool. No one's going to look back like you did anything crazy. But at the same time, if it doesn't work, I think they're still going to take some solace in the fact that it's probably easier to find offensive linemen than find great weapons for your quarterback. So I'm just maybe trying to look at the way that they're looking at it, because they were really gung-ho about it. If it was me, I probably still would have kept Stevie Johnson, but I understand, I definitely understand why. It's kind of like, you're turning the page, new regime, everything brand new for EJ. Like I said, personally, I would have kept him, but, for personal reasons, I'm obviously not really upset about it. But I'm okay with Buffalo. We're just gonna have to keep our eyes on them to see how they do. I mean, the offensive line can't get any worse than it was last year, can it?
Oh, it can. Oh,
okay.
Sure. Well. When you watch the Lions as long as I have, you learn how far an offensive line can go down.
All right, I was trying to console Bills fans. I think you did just the opposite. On to another group of fans that may or may not need consoling. A lot of people, this team, we're talking about Carolina right here. A lot of folks, pundits, fans, experts, what have you, this was just a polarizing draft. You either loved everything they did or you despised it from 1 through 7. We're going to start off with the picks, and I'm going to let you go first, then I'll share what I think about it. Kelvin Benjamin in the 1st round, they took the big physical playmaker out of Florida State. In the 2nd round, they went and got Coney Ealy out of Missouri. Played on that very talented defensive line, Missouri defensive line with Michael Sam. Trey Turner, offensive guard out of LSU. They followed that up with another not another offensive lineman, but they followed that up with Trey Boston out of North Carolina. And then one of the picks I really did like, I will talk about this one. Beanie Benwickery from San Jose State, and their sixth and final pick, sixth round pick, was Tyler Gaffney, running back out of Stanford. What did you think about the Carolina Panthers draft, considering what happened in offseason? Because people were going in right after Kelvin's name was announced. It didn't stop. They're still going.
Oh, man. I think the thing about Kelvin is the fact that he's, again, a boomer bust prospect, and I think that's really the thing. Everybody looks at him as, yeah, he's a physical guy. He has elite ball skills, and he could be an intriguing weapon with Cam Newton in this Carolina Panther offense. It's just a matter of, is he going to be that guy, or is he really worth going to get with the 28th overall pick? Now, me personally, I'm not a big fan of value at pick. To me, you go with what you need, and if you feel he fits that, he fits that. But that doesn't change the fact that he's still a boomer bust product. Even if you had taken him in the 7th round, I would be saying the same thing. He's a boom or he's a bust type guy. But because you took him in the 1st round, it's a little bit more boom and a little bit more bust about him. But again, I get what they're doing. They're trying to add a couple more weapons, but kind of talked about this during the season. Carolina had some struggles at times with Cam Newton. We felt at times he didn't have enough weapons. At times we said maybe he needed better weapons. So I think they're looking at it as, okay, you know what, let's go get him another weapon. And then at the same time, we're going to take care of our defensive needs. Let's again go improve our defense. We understand defense wins championships. Let's go get that strong safety. Let's go get that corner. Let's go get that defensive end to make our defense a little bit more impactful. So I get what they're doing. They're just basically adding depth to certain areas that they already have, and then at the same time, they're trying to improve those little weaknesses that they feel maybe stopped them from accomplishing certain goals last year. So I think it's a give or take thing. It's kind of similar to what we said about Buffalo. It's going to be more about how these guys perform that will determine how we truly feel if this was a boom or this was a bust draft type for them.
Yeah, and I totally agree with everything you said. In regards to Kelvin Benjamin, all I can say is, while I do think it's really a boomer bust type deal, I think if you were going to select a kid on that high risk, high reward, you better make sure you have a good coaching staff in place, and whatever coach is going to be leading that position group that you take a prospect like that, you got Ricky Prohl. And that's why I really feel okay about this. Also, watching Kelvin at Florida State, even if, say he can't separate on this level, which I think he will be able to do. I think some of this stuff's a little overrated. But, let's go ahead and play devil's advocate. Say he can't separate. Vincent Jackson doesn't really separate either. At the end of the day, kind of like the NBA, you can't teach size. And where are we going in the NFL right now? With wide receiving cores, it's all about size. So you can't teach 6'5", 240. I don't care if he can't ever separate. If you can run to the yellow line, turn your butt around, and still be 6'5", 240 when you turn around, while, yeah, it might have been a reach at the 1st round, there's a lot of good teams that don't have red zone targets. Even if you were a one-trick pony, life is okay. Life is okay. But I actually did like their draft. But, I understand people going crazy. I think it's always hard when you lose a Steve Smith. No matter who came in, was going to get trashed. It was going to happen. There wasn't a wide receiver. Sammy Watkins could have went to Carolina, and people would have been like, he ain't Steve Smith, though. So it's going to happen. The other thing, Michael Irvin doesn't vouch for too many people. If Michael Irvin can go ahead and put his name on Kelvin's back, Carolina fans, just relax. Life could be okay. And at least this way, when Cam throws passes that kind of sail a little high, they'll be to somebody that, that's within this. It's a catch radius. You finally got somebody with a large catch radius. So, just try to be optimistic with how you look at this. And as of right now, with the news coming out with Greg Hardy and the alleged domestic issues, that Coney Ely pick looks real good right now.
Yeah, it does. It does, and I think they already knew it was coming. I think Carolina knew something about that. Something.
Hey, look, they must have knew something.
They knew something was about to happen. Because I swear that pick, like you said, is looking too good. And just to say, with this whole domestic assault situation going on, Greg Hardy, You know, it seems to me that the NFL really needs to start addressing this domestic assault situation a little bit better than they have, and the punishment needs to reflect these certain charges that certain guys are getting, because this is becoming ridiculous at this point for me. If I hear one more assault charge about a player in the NFL, I'm gonna have a problem myself. It's getting to a ridiculous point. The NFL needs to start reflecting that fit the crime.
Yeah, and I'm glad, I'm not going to stay on this topic too long, but I'm glad that you brought that up because I was talking to Rob a little earlier, and it just boggles my mind. You remember when, the Ray Rice incident happened, and, everyone had that whole, oh, my goodness, I can't believe that happened. Everybody really cared about it. Then Alden did something stupid, and as much as all the crazy things Alden's done, the only things that Alden's done is hurt Alden. Never anybody else, just Alden. At the same token, not that I'm justifying what he's done, because that stupidity is stupidity. At the same time, you have folks getting in trouble for putting their hands on females. Numerous occasions, it continues to happen. But it's almost like you get fined more for smoking weed in the league than you do for putting your hands on a woman. Something needs to be done. They need to fix this. Like you said, the punishment needs to be far more severe. It's ridiculous that we stopped talking about Ray Rice's thing for a false bomb threat or whatever stupidness happened with Alden. And the fact that you knocked the woman, you knocked the woman out, or there was evidence of you walking out of the elevator with, your woman unconscious, what have you. We want to talk about this. It just wasn't a good look, and it just went away. And it routinely goes away too easy. Like even today with the Greg Hardy news, the only thing that was, in every outlet was talking about Chris Paul and what happened with him last night. And that's kind of huge. You allegedly physically assaulted your woman. And it was just like Greg Hardy got in trouble for domestic issues. That was it. Nothing more, nothing less. So I couldn't agree with you more. Goodell has to do something about this. He's always ready to step up and about the stupid things, about celebrating and all the pointless things that the NFL is so ready to, go take a stand against. They might want to look a little closer to home and really take a stand against this, because what's going to happen before, eventually it's going to get too far, and, that type of result, it shouldn't take, that type of result that I'm not going to bring up or mention for that conversation to be finally had. It shouldn't get to that point.
Agreed. I completely agree.
It definitely shouldn't get to that point. But moving on, the Chicago Bears, I love their draft, by the way. First round, they selected Kyle Fuller out of Virginia Tech. In the second round, Ego Ferguson. A lot of people were hitting Google when that happened. Third round, Will Sutton. It went defensive tackle. In the fourth round, they picked up Mr. Kadeem Carey out of Arizona. Also in the fourth round, Brock Vereen, safety out of Minnesota. David Fales, a quarterback, in the sixth round. I think that was a round for quarterback, sixth and seventh rounds. Pat O'Donnell, they selected a punter. In the seventh round, their final pick of the 2014 draft, they selected Charles Leno Jr., an offensive tackle out of Boise State. The Bears draft, how do you think Phil Emery did?
I thought the Bears did a solid job in this draft. They went once again and they went with what they know best, which is automatically first defense, or at the time they knew what was best for defense. Now they obviously have a little bit new coaching staff. They're focusing again on the offense. But I really like the fact that they understood, our defense wasn't the way we wanted it to be last year. It wasn't the Bears of old. And while we do have a new coaching staff and Lovie Smith is not here anymore, we're still going to make sure that we have, again, that great defense. So to go and get Kyle Fuller out of Virginia Tech and basically add to that already, if you will, good or one of the better quarterback tandems in the NFL, and Tim Jennings and Tillman, I think was smart, especially with all the issues that we've seen with Tillman with injuries. This is a good move. Fuller can come in day one. He can play in the Bears' nickel defense. He can match up against slot receivers. He can defend the run. In the second round and the third round, I like the fact that, again, they're upgrading that defensive line with aggressive guys like Will Sutton, like Ego Ferguson, versatile, aggressive guys. But at the same time, being smart and saying, let's focus still on the offense. Let's make sure we continue to keep our quarterback, Jay Cutler, protected and safe. but also let's start thinking about the future. We know sometimes we have issues at the running back position, so let's go get that underrated guy, Kadeem Carey, out of Arizona, and maybe we can start developing him. And let's go get David Fales, who we think can again fit into this offense. If he works out, great. We'll use him once Cutler's gone or Cutler gets hurt. If he doesn't work out, so what? It wasn't that big of a deal. Or you can always use him as trade bait again if he works out. So I thought that they made some solid choices and made some solid decisions for the Bears, at least in my personal opinion.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't even have much to add outside of think about the draft by itself. They did a good job. Now, couple that with the job they did in free agency, it's been a pretty good offseason for Chicago. I mean, a very good offseason for Chicago. On to the Cincinnati Bengals. First round, they selected Darqueze Dennard out of Michigan State, Jeremy Hill from LSU, Will Clark out of West Virginia, Russell Bodine, center from North Carolina, Mr. A.J. McCarron, #character issues. Sixth round, Mr. Marquise Flowers, outside linebacker out of Arizona. We got James Wright from LSU in the 7th round. And last but not least, Lavelle Westbrooks. What did you think about them addressing the back end of their defense with their first overall pick?
I thought it was smart, especially considering Cincinnati had probably one of the more underrated and better secondaries to start off the season, and that secondary slowly but surely started to wind down very quickly due to injury. So I think this is basically their way of saying, you know what, let's bring in that young corner. We're shy Darqueze Dennard dropped to us at 24, but we're not stupid. We're going to take him. He's a man coverage specialist. He's that elite click and close type guy who has that great superior ability to track down the football. He adds to that, again, already competitive yet underrated group at corner that they already have, and more than likely he will come in and compete for a starting position. I also like the fact that they went and got Lavelle Westbrook, who was an underrated corner out of Georgia Southern, who may not necessarily start immediately, but again, somebody you can develop who can work out well. But at the same time, the thing I really like about Cincinnati that they did is they're really saying, you know what, we hear you guys. You're right. We do need to challenge Andy Dalton. Andy Dalton has shown too many times this season we can't necessarily fully count on him as much as we would like to, especially when it counts. So you know what? We're going to bring in a guy who comes out of the Alabama system, has a good football IQ, understands how to make correct throws. He's going to have to make some adjustments, obviously, for college and NFL, but we feel confident that we can develop him. And if you don't do what you're supposed to, Andy, you need to McCarron is behind you. But at the same time, they're also saying, well, we're going to make sure we continue to give you weapons for both of you to succeed, whether that's A.J. McCarron or that's Andy Dalton, which is why we went and got James Wright out of LSU, who slid down to that 7th round, which is why we went to go get Jeremy Hill, the running back out of LSU. They're basically saying we're putting you in a position to succeed, either one of you. But we're not going to take any more excuses, Andy, and there's somebody behind you now who we're going to try our best to develop if you do not work out. So I actually like the draft by Cincinnati. I think they're basically starting to understand what we had already been saying, which was you need to start thinking about the future and whether Andy Dalton is your guy. But at the same time, while you're doing that, continue to build up your team on both sides of the ball. And to me, that's what they did in this draft.
You hit the nail on the head. I don't have anything else to add at all, except I hope Andy understands that, you know, those past failures are not accepted, man. Is you have a good team. You can't keep falling short like that. At least, I mean, if you fall short, not that way. The way that they've been kicked out of the playoffs has been rather embarrassing. You know, the last 2 trips that they've had there. On to the Cleveland Browns, one of the most popular teams in the world, as of Johnny Manziel getting selected at the bottom of the 1st round. Their 1st round pick, I think they surprised a lot of people, taking Justin Gilbert out of Oklahoma State. Not that they took Justin Gilbert, but where they took Justin Gilbert, because everyone was like, well, Cleveland has to take a quarterback. They did. They traded back into the 1st round. And they selected Johnny Football. After that, they went and got a guy to protect Johnny Football, and Joel Bitonio, a guy that was making a lot of noise heading into the draft as a guy, a do-it-all type offensive lineman, and everybody had his name on the tip of their tongues heading into the draft. I'm talking like the last week into the draft. That's all you heard was Bitonio. In round 3, they selected Christian Kirksey, outside linebacker out of Iowa, a pick that I loved. It may be an underrated pick to some, but the kid's the real deal. Terrence West out of Towson, 5'9", 225 pounds. He's going to be out there with Ben Tate. It's a really solid backfield. Another pick that I love, and it was their final pick, Pierre Desir. So after you get Justin Gilbert, presumably start opposite Mr. Joe Hayden, you get another. I think Desir slid in my book. That's just me. You get another tall, long, physical corner in the 4th round. So I was definitely a fan of their draft. I didn't care which quarterback they ended up taking, but for Johnny, I thought out of Johnny, Teddy, or Blake, I thought for Blake and Johnny, it really depended on wherever they went, what type of weapons would be there initially. I think that wherever Teddy went, he would be the one out of the 3 that if he ended up somewhere where the weapons are kind of young and unproven, he'd be okay. Johnny, you had Mike Evans, you walk into Josh Gordon, assuming that the appeal goes through, but you still have Jordan Cameron, so your life's pretty good. Ben Tate, Terrence West. What did you think about their draft? That was okay with Cleveland's.
I like Cleveland's draft. Like you said, I think the main thing Cleveland did, again, dressing both sides of the ball. I like what they did defensively, understanding that the league is changing, and they're kind of taking after the Seahawks, kind of going with that blueprint for the big physical cornerbacks, which is why I think they made a point to go get Justin Gilbert. I think they felt like, he may not drop to us, especially since we know there are a couple teams out here who could take a corner. So we're going to go with him. Like you said, Pierre Desir, who, I hate the Browns for picking, because that was the guy I wanted the Lions to actually get, and got taken a couple picks before the Lions chose again. But that was a great pickup by Cleveland, again, adding that nice big physical corner who's going to help out now all-pro cornerback Joe Hayden. I like that move. And then, again, going to get Johnny Manziel, a guy who is very dynamic, has that great playmaking ability, and who has still time to develop. And I think that's the main thing that I like that Cleveland at least seems to be understanding right now, is we are going to develop him. We understand, there's a possibility he can still start, if something goes down. But their main thing is we're trying to develop these guys for the better, and mainly make sure that this is a team that we can look upon in the next 2 to 3 years in a positive way, similar to how Seattle has been able to look at their draft class with Richard Sherman and Russell Wilson. And obviously, I'm not saying that Cleveland's going to win a Super Bowl in the next 2 to 3 years. I'm just saying they're trying to take it a step at a time, and they're trying to take that next step, which then hopefully get into the playoffs, which will hopefully, again, better success, which will ultimately end up probably being a Super Bowl for them eventually. When that's going to happen, I can't tell you. I may not even be allowed to see it, but then again, I can say the same thing about the Lions.
All right. All I can say is for Cleveland, you put yourselves in a great place. Another team that had a very good offseason, even before the draft, getting just solidifying some spots on the defensive side of the ball. And then what you did with Justin Gilbert and Pierre Desir, adding them alongside a guy people don't even like testing, and Joe Hayden. You lost T.J. Ward, you get Dante Whitner. I like what Cleveland did. I think the biggest thing for me, as far as what happens with them, is, in terms of how they finish the season, with Josh Gordon, sure, they probably have a chance to make the playoffs. Without Josh Gordon, you'll be looking for another wide receiver to complement Josh Gordon or take his place next year at the top of the 2015 NFL Draft. It just is what it is. You're on the side of the NFL where everybody has offense. So while you do have a good defense, you're going to need to score. And you take Josh Gordon away, who's gonna, outside after Jordan Cameron, who's gonna stretch the field? Losing Josh Gordon's gonna be huge. He's kind of sort of a big deal last year. Just look at the numbers and whatnot. Huge deal if he's not available, especially with a young quarterback. On to the Dallas Cowboys. I said the Carolina draft was polarizing. This one was even more so. You had Cowboy fans that hated this draft initially. In the first round, they had a chance. The whole world, Twitter, social media just paused. Like, are you guys going to do it? Going to take Johnny Manziel? They didn't do it. Somehow, they had some type of self-control, and they didn't do it. They selected Zach Martin instead. They followed that off with taking DeMarcus Lawrence, defensive end out of Boise State, another guy whose name really was on the rise the last 4 or 5 days leading up to the draft. Anthony Hitchens, the outside linebacker out of Iowa. They followed that up with Devin Street in the 5th round, 6'3", 198 out of Pittsburgh. They're going to add him to Dez Bryant, Terrence Mitchell? Terrence Williams, sorry. Terrence Williams. And Devin Street. Ben Gardner.
No, you're right, Terrence Mitchell.
Okay. Ben Gardner, Will Smith, Ahmad Dixon, and that's crazy because heading into last year, Ahmad Dixon was a highly touted safety. He went in the 7th round. You get Ken Bishop also in the 7th round, and then Terrence Mitchell out of Oregon. So yeah, Terrence Williams is the wide receiver. Terrence Mitchell, the DB out of Oregon in the 7th round. I just thought that the Cowboys had it wasn't a flashy draft. It was one of those need drafts. They had so many holes. They just went and let's plug this hole, then this hole, then this hole. And while they're not floating, they're definitely not sinking. They definitely don't have as many holes in the bottom of their boat as they did before the draft started. Your thoughts on Dallas's draft?
I thought Dallas showed good restraint. Honestly, I think Jerry Jones just doesn't want anybody taking any attention from him. Tony Romo doesn't enough. But for me, looking at Dallas again, they went offensive line again for the 2nd straight season. But unlike a couple other teams, I don't feel they made a reach. I feel like they made a good decision with Notre Dame tackle Zach Martin. I think he's a guy again who can come in immediately, play. But I also like what they did defensively. Understand, we do need to improve our defense. So let's go out here and let's go get a DeMarcus Lawrence out of Boise State who we can develop. Let's go get Anthony Hitchens out of Iowa, who's that underrated linebacker who still needs some development but can still be a good player for us. But I think some of the real sleepers were guys like Ahmad Dixon, Terrence Mitchell out of Oregon. Those are some sleepers that I actually think could really, really work out well. Again, Terrence Mitchell is a 7th round corner out of Oregon, but he's a good sleeper with pretty good ball skills. Baylor safety as well, and Dixon, he could be special as long as he stays out of trouble off the field. I think that's going to be the biggest thing with him. And even at wide receiver, really Devin Street, wide receiver out of Pittsburgh, he's a guy that I didn't mind. I wouldn't have minded if the Lions had drafted at some point. He had failed to them because, again, he's a good underrated wide receiver who can make an impact for you. Not necessarily a future superstar or anything, but somebody you can count on, again, to be a number 2 or to be a number 3 guy. So I think that's another good move. So I feel like Dallas had a solid draft. They basically tried to do their best to take care of the needs that they feel they need to take care of.
Yeah, like I said, I was definitely okay with it. And I know this is weird, if you're a Cowboy fan watching Jerry do normal things, but all the credit in the world to him. On to the Denver Broncos. You want to talk about the rich getting richer? They did. Bradley Roby fell to the 31st pick in the 1st round. Cody Latimer, their 2nd round selection. So you lose Eric Decker, you get Cody Latimer. I call that a win. Michael Schofield, you address that offensive line. Lamin Barrow, outside linebacker. No issue with that. You address the offensive line again, taking Boise State center Matthew Paradis, and then Corey Nelson, outside linebacker from Oklahoma. What do you think about Denver's draft?
I think you hit it right on the head. The rich got richer in the Denver situation, as they typically do. Bradley Roby, he's one of those guys, as long as he can handle his inconsistency on the field and have no more off-the-field issues, there's no doubt this guy can be an elite cornerback. That's honestly what he was before fading in 2013 because of inconsistency on the field and then off-the-field issues. But again, if he can regain focus and get to where he was back in 2012, Denver will have stolen a player out of the draft who can play immediately and have an immediate impact. And again, they understand, same thing, improving that defense. You know what? Linebacker is an area we need to improve. We need to have more guys who can go out here and coverage at the outside linebacker and be able to take on these tight ends. And they feel like they can get that in Lamin Barrow and Cody Nelson. Again, 2 different type of guys, but at the same time, guys who can make an impact. And even going to get Cody Latimer. I like that move. Again, saying, you know what, let's get Peyton another weapon. Yeah, we know we have already some pretty good weapons, but we're going to add to that, and we're going to go get Cody Latimer, who I feel is one of the more underrated wide receivers in this draft, who's a workhorse, who can do a little bit of everything, and he can develop into a star in the not-so-distant future. So I like Denver's draft. Like you said, the rich got richer.
All right, on to the Detroit Lions. I'm just going to sit back and let you take care of this.
With the Detroit Lions, man, I said this about the first pick. The first pick threw everybody off when they went to go get Eric Ebron. And my concern has nothing to do with Eric Ebron. Eric Ebron is arguably the best tight end in this draft with the potential to be up there with some of the top tight ends in the league and those who have already left, like Antonio Gates and Tony Gonzalez. His name could be right up there with them. concern with that first pick was just the fact that the Lions really need Eric Ebron. I don't think that they needed one. I think they needed to address the corner. Obviously, Justin Gilbert wasn't there, but Darquise Dennard was there. Jason Verrett at TCU was there. Those were the areas that I really wanted the Lions to pay attention to because I felt like this draft was deep enough at wide receiver for you to go get offensive firepower. Now they're in a situation where either somebody's going to get phased out in the tight end situation because now you have a trio with Ebron, Pettigrew, and Furrier. Or if you move with a wide receiver, you still may question later on why didn't we go get that legit corner. So that Eric Ebron pick is an interesting pick. I wouldn't call it a horrible pick, but I wouldn't call it a great pick either. I'm gonna have to see if this will eventually turn to a great pick or not. As far as the rest of the draft, they had some moves that they made that I actually like. I like going to get Kyle Van Noy, the linebacker out of BYU. He's a very instinctive reaction type linebacker. Good enough feet flexibility to be a key in coverage, which is huge for the Lions. So I like that. Travis Swanson, I didn't necessarily agree with that third-round selection because that's, again, where I wanted us to kind of go and get that corner because a lot of the good corners are dropping down to that third round, and we missed out on a couple of them. But I understand why they went to go get Travis Swanson. They're basically saying Raiola is getting ready probably to retire the next few years. If he isn't, so what? He probably won't be a Lion for much longer, so let's start bringing in his replacement who he can start to train up so he's already ready. Nevin Lawson, the corner out of Utah State, very physical guy who I like, who I feel can come in and hopefully compete. And he has the possibility to be that sleeper who comes out and becomes that great corner or becomes that elite corner for the Lions. It's just a matter of seeing what he's going to bring to the table. I like the idea of going to get Karan Reed out of Princeton and Larry Webster out of Bloomsburg. More so, I'm a fan of Karan Reed. I feel he was a definite sleeper coming out of Princeton, high football IQ, has the potential to play and compete immediately. Obviously, he may not be a full-time starter because we have 2 defensive tackles, but at the same time, he's somebody who can compete immediately, and hopefully he'll be a guy that we can start looking towards the future and saying, hey, you know what, if Nick Fairley doesn't work out or if Dominican Sue doesn't work out, we can build around you. Again, same thing with Larry Webster. Has the potential, depending on how you develop, turn into that good pass rusher. It's just a matter of seeing how they develop them. And those last 2 picks, going to get T.J. Jones out of the wide receiver out of Notre Dame, again, proves my point. Good receivers, good offensive firepower. We're dropping down to those later rounds. He's not necessarily a guy I would call a superstar. He's more like a Jason Avant who came out of Michigan, who played for the Eagles. That guy you can count on who's going to do a little bit of everything. He's going to run his routes hard. He's going to do whatever you need to do. Not a superstar, but he'll be a good number 3 guy or a good number 4 guy, a good utility guy that you can count on. And then obviously going to get Nate Freese, the kicker out of Boston College, was a good move. Lord knows we can't count on our current kicker. So I like that move. Again, just saying, you know what, let's go get our next Jason Hanson. Instead of going to get him through free agency, let's draft him. So I thought they had a solid draft. Was it a great draft? I'm not sold on it necessarily being a great draft yet because, again, I really want to see where this defense is going to go, mainly in the secondary, because that was my biggest concern was the secondary going into this draft. But overall, I think it was a good draft for the Lions. It's just a matter of seeing how a lot of these picks work out and who plays immediately and who kind of has to sit back and develop.
Yeah. The only thing I would say is I love the Karan Reed pick. I kind of wanted him, so I'm kind of hating on that. But, yeah, with the Eric Ebron thing, I hope it works out. And the reason that I hope it works out was I hope the Lions didn't fall into the – I think he is athletic. I think he's a very athletic tight end. I do think his athleticism has been a little overblown to some degree. They're talking about, for you to take a tight end when you have 5 on the roster, and it's not like, Furrier was doing a bad job last year. He was balling. So unless Eric Ebron turns into Vernon Davis and you can stick him out wide and stick him in the slot routinely, I don't know. That's the only thing where I don't hate the pick. I think I hate the fit. But hopefully they can figure out a way for it to work. And life would be okay. I'm sure you can't have enough weapons, and especially playing in that division when they went and got Aaron Rodgers more weapons when he didn't need them. So I got to wait before I could say anything about the Ebron thing. Yeah, I saw you roll your eyes. We're going to get to Green Bay right now. Talking about the rich getting richer, they want to make sure Aaron never leaves. So their first pick, they went and got high Clinton Dix, which I had no issue for. That was a great pick. We seen them single-handedly get sent home from the playoffs by San Francisco back-to-back years by them not having anybody having an idea what they're doing on the back end of that defense. You have a corner here and a corner there, but the middle of that defense is just Swiss cheese. So I think HaHa can come in and kind of shore some of that stuff up. He's a smart kid, solid kid. He might be one of the few Alabama DBs that could come in and actually, do their job well. Not to fire shots, just throwing it out there. Round two, you already have Jordy Nelson, and I think, you went and got you got another one in Devontae Adams. When I saw Devontae Adams slide, I was like, oh my goodness, someone's gonna get Devontae Adams. I saw Green Bay go up, and I go, oh my goodness, Devontae Adams is going to Aaron Rodgers, and that's exactly what happened. Kudos to Aaron Rodgers. Wow, and they just had a kid come on for them last year, Boynton, who was doing a good job. Cobb went down. Boynton comes in and steps up, and they now have 4 to 5 very good wide receivers in Green Bay, and it's not like their offense struggled. They addressed their defensive line with Carol Thornton from Southern Mississippi, Richard Rodgers, a tight end from California, Carl Bradford fell to the 4th round. Carl Bradford, most people should be aware of that name. They needed, and this is not a shot at Nick Perry, but they need pass rushing help. It's been Clay Matthews or bust, and it really hasn't been working against the really good teams. Corey Lindsey in the 5th round, a center. Yes, Aaron Rodgers needs help. You need to protect arguably the best quarterback in football. Jared Abaritis, how do you get that after you get Devontae Adams? I don't know. Dimitri Goodson from Baylor, solid pick. Corners can't hurt. And in the 7th round, yeah, by the way, they just get Jeff Janis, combine superstar. Jeff Janis. What did you think about the Packers draft? And I know, as a Lions fan, I saw you roll your eyes already. But the Packers draft, what do you think?
Well, no, my rolling eyes had nothing to do with, being a Lions girl. It's just the fact that, going back to that rich getting richer. Sometimes it's good, but at the same time, you just be like, are you kidding me? Like, are you really just going to just take all these guys, But I get exactly what you're saying. I think you hit it right on the head. Again, defense, especially in that secondary, that's always been a weak point, at least for the last few years, really since they won the Super Bowl. So I think, again, going to get a high Clinton Dix, he's going to shore up the pass defense. He's a hard hitter. He's a huge priority for Ted Thompson, so I like that move. And then, like you said, going back to the rich getting richer, going to get Devontae Adams, the wide receiver out of Fresno.
All right, I think we lost Lauren for a second. We're going to go ahead and try to get her back. You guys could just bear with us for a second. We were just getting in a good rhythm and everything. So halfway done. When Lauren gets back, we'll go ahead and can hear her thoughts on Green Bay. I'm going to go ahead and keep it moving and slide over to Houston. J.J. Watt has to be a happy person. But actually, Lauren just got back, so we're going to wait to get to Houston and let her finish her thoughts on Green Bay as soon as she's ready. Hope you guys are enjoying this. If you had any questions throughout this, feel free to tweet us at MMOS Sports. You can tweet Lauren directly at LBeasley313. Either or works, and we'll address your questions or comments during the show. Later this week, we're going to give out grades for this 2014 draft. Yeah, it's early, but we wanted to just take the time to talk about the draft instead of just, slapping a grade on each one. We probably would have been done 20 minutes ago. You got an A, you got a B, here's a D+. But I think it was a pretty good draft. We continually got told that it was a very deep draft. And I think that proved to be right. I was on Twitter at the end of the draft, and the first thing that came to mind was, you have that 30 to 45 minutes where it's all about the undrafted free agents. There was enough talent this year of, in terms of the players that didn't get picked for maybe another round and a half, if not 2 rounds to keep selecting, and I don't know if that's something that the NFL is going to look at. But you had all those underclassmen come out this year, and obviously there's only 7 rounds. It's a numbers game. Everyone's not going to get selected, but it almost turned into like just college level recruiting as soon as the draft was over. Some teams signed 10, 11 free agents. Some teams could only sign 4, but it was a race to 90. You had some teams cutting, waiving players that they had planned to keep prior to seeing what the undrafted free agent pool looked like, because it was that crazy this year. It was absolutely nuts. Apologize again for the technical difficulties. We're going to get Lauren back in just a second so we can finish talking about this draft. But as I was saying, I'm going to go ahead and keep it moving on to Houston. J.J. Watt has to be a very happy person. They definitely addressed his part of the defense. Jadeveon Clowney, the #1 overall pick, I was one of the people, if you guys have been listening to our show on Blizz FM, there's no doubt in my mind they're going to be the #1 pick unless someone just did something stupid, in my opinion. And that's not a knock on Khalil Mack, Bortles, Bridgewater, Manziel, whoever. You don't pass up that type of talent, especially when you have, you get to pair with J.J. Watt. You had to be out of your mind to turn that opportunity down. After that, Xavier Su'a-Filo, offensive guard from UCLA. They followed that up in the 3rd round with tight end C.J. Fedorowicz, tight end from Iowa. And then their 2nd pick in the 3rd round, which was through a trade with the Steelers, Browns, and Eagles. There's a lot of trading in this year's draft. They got Notre Dame defensive tackle, Notre Dame nose tackle, Lewis Nix, which is huge, 6'2", 331 pounds. They're going to stick in the middle of that Houston defensive line, which is crazy when you think about it. We seen J.J. Watt lined up over the center, lined up over the guard, lined up outside the, across from the tackle. So there's so many different things going to be able to do with this defensive line now. And a lot of people are going, well, you did all this, but what happened to your quarterback? They took Tom Savage, a guy whose name became insanely popular the closer we got to the draft. And that's who they decided to make their quarterback of the future. Matt Schaub is no longer there. Tom Savage is going to get a chance. I don't think he's going to start week 1, but he's going to get a chance. Bill O'Brien's been known as a quarterback coach, and he's going to get a chance to prove it. Definitely going to get a chance to prove it, and see if he can get Tom Savage ready, or we'll find out how long it takes to get Tom Savage up to speed and ready for the Houston Texans. After Tom Savage, they were not done. They got Jeffrey Pagan from Alabama, defensive end. Yes, they continued to add depth to that defensive line. Alfred Blue, running back out of LSU, 6'2", 223 pounds. Some of you may be asking why a running back. Well, Ben Tate is no longer there. As a member of Cleveland Browns, Arian Foster needs backups. He needs partners. It can't just be all Arian. He's already been there for quite a while. Also, in the 6th round, they selected Jay Prosh, fullback out of Auburn. Needs someone to open those holes for Mr. Foster. Andre Hall, from Vanderbilt, a DB. This day and age, you just can't go wrong. And this is one very interesting pick. Athletically gifted would be an understatement. Mr. Lonnie Ballantyne, a.k.a. Mr. Irrelevant, last pick in the 2014 draft. 6'3", 219 pounds, ran a 4.39 40 and had a 38-inch vertical. Obviously, measurables don't mean jack if you don't know what to do with them. But, it's up to the coaching staff to get him pointed in the right direction. So, overall, I thought Houston had a solid draft. That defensive line, I just can't wait to see it. While I'm sure it's going to take some time to get everything working on the offensive side of the ball, as far as the passing game goes, you heard some rumblings this week about Andre Johnson. I don't think he wants to go through this whole rebuilding thing. I mean, how many quarterbacks has he had? How many coaches has he had? This is one of the better wide receivers in the league, and he just was the last time he honestly got to compete for a championship. It's kind of sad what he's been through, but he signed the extension and he's there. That's just what it comes down to. On to the Indianapolis Colts. They did not have a first-round pick due to trading for Trent Richardson. So their draft started in the second round. They selected Jack Moore, offensive tackle from Ohio State. In the third round, they got Dante Moncrief, 6'2", 221 wide receiver out of Mississippi. Big time, you talk about measurables. It's another guy, height, weight, speed. In the fifth round, they selected Jonathan Newsom, Andrew Jackson, inside linebacker to Western Kentucky. And their final pick in the seventh round was Ulrich John, an offensive tackle from Georgia State. Like I said, I'm never going to knock a team for addressing the offensive line. They have one of the better young quarterbacks in the league. You got to protect them. It comes down to give them more time to read defenses and make plays. The Jacksonville Jaguars surprised a lot of people, but they didn't surprise themselves. They drafted according to plan. Obviously, we don't know teams' plan until afterwards, but in the first round, they selected Blake Bortles with the third overall pick in the 2014 draft, followed by Marquise Lee in the second round from USC. They went Blake Bortles, wide receiver. It's all about getting young quarterbacks weapons. They didn't waste any time. After Marquise Lee, they got Allen Robinson for Penn State. So you got two young playmakers to go with your young quarterback. Brandon Linder, a guard from Miami, offensive line. Aaron Colvin, had he not gotten hurt, probably would have got selected, maybe bottom of the first, but definitely second round. A DB from Oklahoma, very good in the slot. In the fifth round, they got Telvin Smith, a freak athlete from Florida State, played some safety. He's playing, I guess he's supposed to be playing linebacker, but at 6'3", 218, he's probably going to need to add a few more pounds to his frame. But we'll see how that goes. Athleticism. In the fifth round, they got Chris Smith from Arkansas, Luke Bawanko, a center from Virginia in the sixth round, and then Storm Johnson from Central Florida. They went and got Blake Bortles, college backfield mate. You got, not only did you get him two wide receivers, but you got him his running back from college. I thought the Jaguars had a good draft. Do I agree with Blake Bortles? No, but if that's the guy that they hitched their wagon to, so be it. They did so with conviction, and they went and got him some weapons. The Kansas City Chiefs, the first round, they selected D4, the pass rusher. We never have enough of those. Passing league. So that means DBs, as you've seen by some of the money being thrown around, at a premium, and the guys that chase the guys throwing the ball, also another premium position to play. All right, so they got Phillip Gaines in the second round, which I thought was a great pick. Good corner out of Rice. DAT, Mr. DeAnthony Thomas out of Oregon. They no longer had Dexter McCluster, so they went ahead and filled that hole with another smallish athlete, freakish athlete at that. But I can't be mad at that pick. Then they went and got Aaron Murray from Georgia. He got hurt last year. It's not a surprise that he got selected in the fifth round. In the sixth round, they had two picks, and they selected Zach Fulton, an offensive guard out of Tennessee, and then an offensive tackle from McGill, and colleges in Canada. So we're going to see how that goes for Kansas City. But as far as getting a D4, I think that's a great look. You definitely have to get pass rushers. You got a corner. Defense, defensive depth was an issue for them in the playoffs. We definitely saw that as people went down. Folks weren't able to step in and keep things rolling, and they definitely suffered from it. So on from the Chiefs, we are moving to the Miami Dolphins. The Miami Dolphins, in the first round, they selected Juwan James. A lot of people were shocked. They had those cameras up showing teams, where their fans were watching the draft together, draft watch parties at stadiums and whatnot. And, they were all cheering before the pick. The pick goes in. They say Juwan James, and you would have thought that the feed got stuck. They were having transmission issues. But they got an offensive tackle out of Tennessee, which I can't be mad at. You address the offensive line. You have a young quarterback. Good job. The other thing they did was via trade from the Broncos and 49ers, they spent their second-round pick on Jarvis Landry out of LSU, which one of the better wide receivers in this draft, just fell a little bit. He's not a big time. He's not a measurables guy. He's not very tall, not very fast. He's a football player. He's an outstanding hands catcher. So going to be a quarterback's best friend, honestly. Ryan Tannehill is going to love Jarvis Landry. In the third round, they addressed the offensive line again with Billy Turner, from North Dakota State. Fourth round, Walt Aikens from Liberty, 6'1", 205-pound safety, and he ran a 4.49. The fifth round, they got Arthur Lynch, a tight end out of Georgia. While he's not a deep threat, he's a good blocker. Just an old-fashioned tight end. Good move by them. Then in the fifth round, Jordan Tripp was available. Outside linebacker from Montana. Made a lot of noise, after the season and Senior Bowls, those type of games. And, I thought he was going to go higher than the fifth round, but fortunate for the Dolphins, that wasn't the case. Their sixth round pick was Matt Hazel, Coastal Carolina wide receiver. And their seventh round pick was Terrence Feed, defensive end, 6'4", 276 out of Marist. When they made this selection, Michael Sam was available, but this was the selection that they made, just as we have to respect, that the Rams, for their choice for where they selected Michael Sam, we have to respect the Dolphins the same for what they did. And what they did was select the player they thought would fit their roster better. Want to thank Lauren Beasley for joining us tonight. Unfortunately, she won't be able to return. But like I said, we always enjoy it when she has time to help us out and share her expertise and her insight. On from the Dolphins, we're going to be moving to the, sorry about that, guys, Minnesota Vikings. And they got themselves a quarterback. I called my cousin this weekend and I told him he's a big time Minnesota fan. He already fell out of love with Christian Ponder, as I'm sure a lot of Minnesota fans have done by now. With the first overall pick, not the first overall pick, but the first round selection was Anthony Barr. A lot of people thought Anthony Barr would go higher. He still was a top 10 pick. Jared Allen is no longer there, so they had to address. You lost your best pass rusher. You need a new one. Anthony Barr is their selection. While he's a little raw, high upside. So it's on the coaching staff to translate that upside into production sooner than later. They traded back into the first round, the last pick in the first round, 32nd overall, to select Teddy Bridgewater. That's their quarterback. While I do not think many of the quarterbacks will start week one, I wouldn't be surprised if Teddy Bridgewater does. It's just if they go ahead and let that just be an open quarterback competition. They already said that it's a new offense to give everybody the same, to even the playing field. And I think Teddy Bridgewater can make that happen. And don't forget, he has North Turner in his corner, which is a huge advantage over some of his peers at that position. In the third round, the Minnesota Vikings selected Scott Crichton, defensive end out of Oregon State, 6'3", 273. There's nothing wrong with depth of the defensive line. You lost Jared Allen. The production is going to have to be made up by committee. Also in the third round, Jerick McKinnon, a guy that our Owen Reese was very high on, 5'9", 209 running back out of Georgia Southern. Adrian Peterson's not going to play forever. Toby Gerhart isn't there, and you need somebody to step in. I think this is a wonderful opportunity for a young running back, and I think McKinnon should be able to go in and seize that opportunity. In the fifth round, David Yankee fell to them, a guy who might be able to step in and help immediately on that offensive line. In the sixth round, Antoine Exum out of Virginia Tech. Even though he fell, Virginia Tech corners, they do quite all right in the National Football League. You would think, in the sixth round that there's not many picks left. They still had 4 or 5 left. Kendall James, a defensive back out of Maine. Shamar Stephen from Connecticut, 6'5", 309 defensive tackle. Also in the seventh round, Brandon Watts, outside linebacker, Georgia Tech. And lastly, Jabari Price, 5'10" DB out of North Carolina. So he definitely addressed some needs. You got Xavier Rhodes last year. You had Sharif Floyd. And for Anthony Barr, his success is going to be tied to Sharif Floyd. Sharif Floyd is able to step in this year, seize the moment and the opportunity, and be disruptive. It's only going to make life easier on the Vikings for first-round pick this year. And, I look to Sharif Floyd to do that, and I expect the kid to do that this year. The Patriots, the theme, you've heard the rich got richer. several times. Well, I wish I could come up with a different adage, but it applies in this situation once again. In the first round, they selected Dominique Easley. He tore his ACL. He's torn an ACL in each of the last 2 years, one on one leg, one on the other. The Patriots are the Patriots. They were able, after letting go with Vince Wilfork, they were able to retain him. If Dominique Easley is ready to go this year, it's a plus. If he's not, it's okay. In the second round, either Ryan Mallett behind Tom Brady, but maybe they felt that wasn't enough because they selected Jimmy Garoppolo out of Eastern Illinois, Tony Romo's alma mater. In round 4, they got Brian Stork from Florida State, addressed that offensive line. James White out of Wisconsin. I was surprised about them getting another running back, but it's the Patriots. Depth is depth. David Yankee going in the 5th round to the Vikings. One of his former teammates, Cameron Fleming, tackle at Stanford, went in the 4th round to the New England Patriots. They followed that up by selecting another offensive lineman, John Halipo, offensive guard out of Florida. Also in the 6th round, Zach Moore, a defensive end from Concordia. Jamea Thomas, a slot corner from Georgia Tech. And last but not least, you remember Jeremy Gallon from Michigan? And this is what's crazy. Jeremy Gallon had a pretty good college career. He wasn't the greatest receiver in the world, but he was definitely, Lauren brought up Jason Avant earlier. Just that type of guy that he's always been able to catch the ball and make himself available for a quarterback. What's the biggest issue that the Patriots had last year? Yeah, they had a lot of younger wide receivers, and Tom Brady did a marvelous job bringing them along. But one of the biggest things was just the fundamentals with the wide receivers. A lot of them, dropping the ball or turning to run before securing the ball. Jeremy Gallon, all he does is catch. Tom Brady's going to love having him. And no, I'm not going to throw the Wes Welker comparison out just because he's another short guy that's playing in the slot. I'm just simply going to say he's going to be a welcome addition to the Patriots. That's it. I'm not going to say anything else about that. The New Orleans Saints, they had a great draft. They selected Brandon Cooks in round 1 as if they needed more weapons. His name was being thrown around associated with Deshaun Jackson, not remotely the same player. Brandon Cooks plays way bigger than 5'10", 189. Outstanding playmaker. Crazy change of direction. 4'3", 40. And he's going to Drew Brees. Just think about that for a second. If there was ever a weapon that you didn't want a top quarterback to have, it would be the pairing of Brandon Cooks and Drew Brees. In the second round, they got Stanley Jean-Baptiste, 6'3", 218-pound corner out of Nebraska. Everyone's trying to do that Seattle Seahawks thing, get a bunch of strong, tall, young corners. I'm not mad at the Saints for that. In the 4th, they addressed the linebacking core by picking up Kerry Forts, inside linebacker from California. They got Vinny Sunseri. You're going to pair him back there with Kenny Vaccaro eventually, which I think was a great move. You don't have Roman Harper anymore. Vinny Sunseri, while he's not he's not great, he's solid. I honestly think he's a solid player. If you're going to put somebody next to an outstanding playmaker, which I think the Saints envision Vaccaro being, you need somebody solid. I liken it to having a Jim Leonard next to Ed Reed. You don't need to be great. They just need to trust you to do your job. In the 5th round, they selected Ronald Powell, outside linebacker from Florida, and their final selection in the 6th round was Tavon Brooks, an offensive tackle from Kansas State. So the Saints definitely got rich, and they also, if you think about what they did in free agency, they've had a very good offseason. Saints fans should be pretty happy. The New York Giants, another team that was busy in free agency, but their first-round pick was outstanding. You got ODB. Odell Beckham. Everyone was talking about if you didn't get Sammy Watkins, the next best thing was Odell Beckham, and he gets to play with Victor Cruz and Ruben Randall for Eli Manning in New York. Great pickup. You need another weapon. Akeem Nicks is not there anymore, so why not get Eli another weapon? We're talking about just solid guys that should be able to come in and contribute right away. He's kind of the opposite of Landry, where what they do have common, they're both very good football players. He has all those measurables that you're talking about. You want to talk about great bloodlines with the Matthews. His mother, All-American sprinter, and his dad played college football for LSU. Yeah, and great route runner. So I think it's a match made in heaven. In the 2nd round, they selected Weston Richburg, center out of Colorado State. Got to protect Eli, especially after the year that he had last year. He needs to be protected. Jay Bromley, a defensive tackle from Syracuse, they addressed the defensive line. Andre Williams, one of the most productive running backs in the draft, outstanding resume. As far as his collegiate career, he ends up in New York. In the 5th round, they got Nate Berhe, a safety from San Diego State, followed by Devon Kennard from USC, outside linebacker, and Bennett Jackson. I'm glad that they addressed the linebacker position. The Giants haven't had a great linebacking group since Eli has been there. Bennett Jackson from Notre Dame was the last selection. A DB. Once again, I'm not going to knock any team for selecting a DB, but I love the fact that the Giants started their draft with Odell Beckham. I'm a little jealous, as you can tell, but Odell Beckham. In the 1st round for the New York Jets, they got Calvin Pryor. Been calling him a Deshaun Goldson clone almost this whole time. That's exactly what he reminds me of. And I'm sure Rex Ryan had similar thoughts when they saw themselves on the clock and they went to go get themselves an enforcer on the back end of that defense. So you lost Revis. You gotta make up for production. And numbers is going to take more than a couple of folks. Antonio Cromartie's gone as well. So now you went ahead. You could get away with having any old guy back there at safety. When you had Revis and Cromartie at your corner, things are different now. Ed Reed's still there, so Calvin Pryor needs to take advantage and soak up all the knowledge he can before Ed retires. In the 2nd round, they went and got whoever the quarterback's going to be some weapons. And we would have just said, they went and got Geno Smith some weapons. So open quarterback competition, and they added another talented quarterback to their group. They got J.C. Amaro. They followed that up with Dexter McDougal. One of the better cornerbacks in this draft. One of the reasons he's flown under the radar is injuries. That's all. But he gets up and down the field. He's a very fluid athlete. I think he was a great pick for them. In the 4th round, they followed that up with Jalen Saunders, slot guy out of Oklahoma. They went receiver here. Shaq Evans out of UCLA, 6'1", 213 pounds. Weapons was the key for the Jets. Dakota Dozier addressing the offensive line, played tackle at Furman. Jeremiah George, inside linebacker from Iowa State. Got Brandon Dixon, a DB from Northwest Missouri State. In the 6th round, it was a special round for them. They got Quincy Enunwa, 6'2", 225-pound wide receiver out of Nebraska. Followed that up with Louisiana Tech. Yeah, Quentin Patton last year. This year, you got Ike Nkempow. Defensive end, he's going to have a chance to play. I think he'll probably be moved to outside linebacker because 261's not enough to play next to, Mr. Muhammad and Mr. Richardson up there. Taj Boyd in the 6th round. Clemson's quarterback. You had Sammy Watkins. He had Nuke Hopkins. Martavius Bryant. All those guys got selected higher than him. But this was the guy throwing them the ball. And one of the things that stands out, one of the things he brings to the table that's a little different than Geno and Michael Vick, he doesn't turn the ball over as much, which could go a long way, play a huge role into that quarterback competition. In the 7th round, Trevor Riley, outside linebacker from Utah. So the Jets, I thought they had a solid draft. I think their quarterback competition is going to be epic. I don't know who's going to come out on top, but it's a 3-way competition, honestly. The Oakland Raiders had a big, their their off-season, started off with a bang in free agency. Getting Justin Tuck, Lamar Woodley, Carlos Rogers, Terrell Brown, Austin Howard. So many new pieces, and they continue that trend on in the draft. They knew exactly what they wanted. They were very assertive. And let's talk about their picks. In the 1st round with the 5th overall pick, they got Khalil Mack, outside linebacker from Buffalo. Very versatile piece. You can do a lot of different things with him. Now, ideally, you have Khalil Mack and C.O. Moore, as 4-3 outside linebackers, rushing the passer, which is going to be wonderful. In the 2nd round, they got Derek Carr. That's going to be their quarterback. We thought maybe it would have been Terrell Pryor. Obviously, that didn't work out. Pryor's in Seattle. Derek Carr is going to be their guy. And once they got a quarterback, they got one of those big uglies to protect them up front, and Gabe Jackson from Mississippi State. Followed that up with Justin Ellis from Louisiana Tech. Yeah, another Louisiana Tech kid got drafted this year. 6'1", 334-pound tackle. Gotta love that. We mentioned Stanley Jean-Baptiste a little earlier. Here's that other 6'3" corner, Keith McGill, 6'3", 211-pound corner from Utah. A lot of people throwing Brandon Browner around with him. But even if that's the case, size is size, and with all the big wide receivers these days, it can't hurt. And you get a chance to mold them. Also in the 7th round, you got Travis Carey, a DB out of Ohio, Shelby Harris, defensive end, and Jonathan Dwelling, a safety from Western Kentucky. A pick that I definitely did like. So I think the Raiders have had a great offseason. On to the Philadelphia Eagles. We're winding down here. We're almost there. The Eagles, their first round pick, a lot of people were shocked. I think every Eagle fan was shocked. It was Marcus Smith. I thought it was a great need pick. You needed outside linebacker. I don't think there's that many in this that came out this year that are going to be able to contribute right away as far as rushing the passer. I think he can. So I think that is a great thing, and especially with depth. Even if he doesn't start right away, he's going to be able to give Connor Barwin, a breather. Give Trent Cole the same thing. And my biggest thing was it was a huge need, and you addressed that with the first overall pick. No matter who the guy is, I can't get mad at you. In the 2nd round, thought they had a great pick in Jordan Matthews, 6'3" wide receiver out of Vanderbilt. He kind of dismissed some of those pre-draft thoughts about him being a slower guy. Ran a 4.4 at the combine. I think they're going to love him. I think he's a very complete wide receiver. They followed that up with Josh Huff from Oregon, so that's more weapons. You lost Deshaun Jackson. You can't do it with just one player. So by committee. So there's Josh Huff and Jordan Matthews joining Riley Cooper, Jeremy Maclin. In the 4th round, they got Jalen Watkins. Florida had several DBs come out. This was the only one that was actually drafted. Jalen Watkins, versatility. Jalen Watkins first, we're playing word association here. Jalen Watkins, versatility. You can put him anywhere in the secondary, and he can hold his own. So I'm sure they're gonna enjoy having him back there and use that as a luxury. Taylor Hart from Oregon, defensive end, so you address the defensive line. Ed Reynolds, a safety from Stanford, and Bo Allen from Wisconsin in the 7th round. You got a 6'2", 333-pound run stuffer in the 7th round. Very solid draft for the Eagles. Extremely solid draft for the Eagles. Pittsburgh Steelers were busy. We're talking about the Ravens drafting Ravens. The Steelers drafted. They could have made a more Steeler-like pick in the 1st round. 15th overall, they took Ryan Shazier, outside linebacker from Ohio State, 6'1", 237. He's going to be able to fly sideline to sideline and give Lawrence Timmons some help in that front 7. In the 2nd round, addressing the front 7 against Stephon Tuitt from Notre Dame, 6'5", 304. This is a team that plays at 3-4. You need those big guys all across the line. The 3rd pick they got in the 3rd round, they got Dre Archer, which is an unstealer-like pick, but sometimes you got to do the unconventional thing. With Dre Archer, you got a playmaker. You don't know what he's going to be. Tavon Austin, Dexter McCluster, Ace Sanders, what have you. All you do know is that when he gets the ball in space, he's extremely explosive. They followed that pickup with Martavius Bryant. I think he's gonna be a great pro. Like Kelvin Benjamin, a lot of people it's 1-year wonder type guys. I think Martavius and Kelvin will both be fine. Shaquille Richardson, DB out of Arizona. They got in the 5th round Wesley Johnson from Vanderbilt. He played tackle, offensive tackle that is. Also in the 5th round, their last pick was Jordan Zumwalt, an inside linebacker from UCLA, 6'4", 235. Steeler. Just read Steeler right there. Thought they had a solid draft as well. Keep in mind, I'm not throwing grades out. We're just talking about the draft halls right now. The San Diego Superchargers, 1st round, they got the guy I personally wanted for my team to get in the 1st round. But they got Jason Verrett. The only thing wrong with Jason Verrett is he's 5'9" instead of 6 foot. He was 6 foot. He may have went before Justin Gilbert, and I really truly mean that. In the 2nd round, they got Jeremiah Atachu, outside linebacker from Georgia Tech. Told you, wasn't a lot of these outside linebacker in this draft that could come in right away and rush the passer. He's one of them. So I think that's a great look. You have Melvin Ingram. You got some good pieces up front. Kendall Reyes, Ken Johnson. I like what the Chargers did. In the 3rd round, they also got Chris Watt to address, fit a need on offensive line. And here we go addressing that defensive line again. Ryan Carruthers, Nose tackle, Arkansas State, 6'1", 337. 337, and you know, you're playing those, kind of got to be a strong guy. 34 reps at 225 pounds. Can't hurt for depth. Marion Grice, running back from Arizona State, gets you some depth behind Ryan Matthews, which I'm A-okay with, and another Baylor wide receiver, Tevin Reese, 5'10", 163. All I'm going to say is if he's like every other Baylor receiver we've seen, it's about time that we stop knocking them before they play. He'll probably be dynamic. I think that's the safest way to go about that. So they definitely hit on each one of their needs in that draft. San Francisco 49ers, they had an interesting draft depending on how you want to look at it. I thought it was a solid draft. They got Jimmy Ward in the first round. Another guy, versatility is the name of the game with this kid. Played safety in college, played corner as well. Niners already talked about he's going to play. He's going to start out in the slot before learning those two safety spots. Carlos Hyde, running back from Ohio State. It's like 9 running backs on the roster. Marcus Martin from USC fits a need. Jonathan Goodwin no longer there. Don't know if Daniel Kilgore is going to be the guy. Chris Borland, inside linebacker. LeVar Bowman out. Depth never hurts. Brandon Thomas from Clemson. Followed that up with Bruce Ellington from South Carolina. Dynamic player in the slot while he's still a little raw. You know, we're talking about Dree Archer. You get him in space, and special things happen. Dante Johnson from North Carolina State. Surprised that he was there. 6'2", 200 pounds. Corner, and unlike some of the bigger corner, really smooth hips. I mean, really smooth hips. When I saw it, just watching the combine drills and watching some clips, that's the first thing that jumped out of mind. Likened to when, watch Chris Culliver a couple years back. It's like for a big guy, for one of those taller corners, they move real well. They're very fluid athletes. Speaking of fluid athletes, they took a flyer on Aaron Lynch from South Florida. Got Keith Reeser from Florida Atlantic. Kenneth Acker, both of them being DBs. In the 7th round, Caleb Ramsey, a defensive end out of Boston College, and they followed up with Trey Miller, fullback from Oklahoma. Several of their draft selections won't be playing this year as they have injuries, so it's kind of like they're going to be pulling the Marcus Lattimore redshirt type deal. As far as the Niners draft goes, they hit all their needs. And one of the other things to be noted, they had a draft day trade that involved, player outside of just, trading for draft picks. They acquired Stevie Johnson from the Buffalo Bills. So that may have been why they didn't pick up another wide receiver. The Seattle Seahawks, the Super Bowl champs, start off with a bang in this draft. They traded they had the last pick in the first round. They traded that to Minnesota, so Minnesota could select Teddy Bridgewater, and they moved down. They traded down several times, which is the Pete Carroll thing to do. They selected Paul Richardson out of Colorado. 6 foot, 175. All you need to do is the kid can really, really fly. 4'2", 840. Yeah. Also in the second round, Justin Britt, offensive tackle. Great pick. You need that. That's definitely something. Russell Wilson, for all the great plays that he makes, a lot of them happen, when he's on the move. And the reason he's on the move, doesn't get the greatest protection back there. They picked up Cassius Marsh, defensive end from UCLA. They're getting richer on defense. This is what they're going to do. Kevin Norwood, a hands guy, possession wide receiver. Russell Wilson's probably going to love him, from Alabama. Kevin Pierre-Louis out of Boston College, outside linebacker. I'm sure they're going to just move him around. I'm just going to say he's going to be a linebacker. Seattle's defense flies around. The linebackers all very fast and physical. Jimmy Stanton from Middle Tennessee State, defensive tackle. They got Garrett Scott, offensive tackle. Free safety, 6'3", 220 pounds from San Diego State, Mr. Eric Pinkins, and Kiero Small, running back from Arkansas. And like all the other running backs on the roster, huge, 5'8", which isn't huge, but the weight, 244 pounds. The St. Louis Rams, and I'm going to say right now, I gave them an A++, and I said we were not doing grades, but that's one that I decided they were getting A+ before I even knew we were doing a hangout to talk about this. The Rams in the first round, Greg Robinson. You got yourself a tackle. You got your guy on that offensive line to protect Mr. Bradford, to keep him upright and see if he really is the guy for you at that position. They followed that up by bolstering arguably one of the league's best defensive line. You had Chris Long, Mike Brockers, Robert Quinn, and now you got Aaron Donald to throw on that line. It's crazy. If that wasn't enough to get LaMarcus Joyner from Florida State, like the Honey Badger, and I'm not saying he's the same person, but played several different places in the Florida State secondary, which doesn't hurt. You had Zach Stacy last year, who came out of nowhere and did great things for them. And they followed that up by getting another tough physical running back in Trey Mason from Auburn. Workhorse, to say the least. You get Mo Alexander out of Utah State, 6'1", 220-pound safety. E.J. Gaines, very underrated corner in the SEC. Went to Missouri, quicker than fast. Another guy, smooth hips. Can't go wrong with getting DBs. They got Garrett Gilbert, quarterback out of SMU. Just to provide some depth, Sam Bradford hasn't exactly been the most durable quarterback ever. Mitchell Van Dyke, offensive tackle out of Portland State. They got C.B. Bryant, free safety out of Ohio State. And, Mr. Michael Sam, defensive end out of Missouri, 6'2", 261. Probably a situational pass rusher, but we're going to see if anybody can figure out a way to use him. If he makes the team, Greg Williams would be that guy. Demetrius Rainey was their last pick in this draft, center from Tennessee State. Once again, if you're addressing that offensive line, you're not going to hear anything negative from me at all. On to our last three teams, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They had Vincent Jackson. They wanted another one. Vincent Jackson gets a new best friend, Mike Evans from Texas A&M. Not the fastest guy, but Vincent Jackson's been getting it done by being a fluid athlete, being a fluid big guy, and for being 6'5", 230. And this kid, same measurables as Vincent Jackson. Luke McCown has to be the luckiest quarterback in the world. You played with Brandon Marshall, Baby Brandon, and Alshon Jeffrey last year. Now you get old, you get Vincent Jackson, then young Vincent Jackson. It's wonderful. He's already used to having those two huge targets on the outside, so it shouldn't even be a big adjustment for them, for McCown rather. Austin Seferian-Jenkins, another huge guy, 6'5", 262. Great route runner. Charles Sims, running back from West Virginia. Doug Martin. Here's some depth for you, buddy. Kadeem Edwards, a guard from Tennessee State. And they followed that up with Kevin Pamphile, offensive tackle from Purdue. Addressing their offensive line. And last but not least, in the sixth round, they got Robert Aron, wide receiver out of Wyoming, a dynamic playmaker. Once again, only thing wrong with him, had he been 6 feet tall, he probably would have got drafted significantly higher. Tennessee Titans in the first round. A lot of people wanted a sexy pick. Instead, they took the need, a more functional pick. They took Taylor Lewan, from Michigan, which I thought was a great pick. Jake Locker hasn't been able to stay healthy, so why not make sure that he can get through the next season? In the second round, they got Bishop Sankey. I think he's going to be wonderful. I mean, honestly, he's going to be wonderful. I wouldn't be surprised if eventually he is their bell cow. And I'm talking about way sooner than later at that. In the fourth round, they got Daquan Jones, defensive tackle out of Penn State, 6'4", 322, going to be joining a very talented defensive line. We got Marquiston Huff, free safety out of Wyoming. Avery Williamson, inside linebacker from Kentucky. And then Zach Mettenberger, quarterback out of LSU. He had to wait a while, but he got drafted. He's now a member of the Tennessee Titans. And once again, it wasn't a sexy draft for the Titans, but it was functional. It fit. They addressed needs. Last but not least, the Washington Redskins. Polarizing draft for some as well. Trent Murphy, outside linebacker from Stanford. All I can say is why he doesn't look like the fastest guy in the world. He's a ball player. He's going to be fine. Redskins fans, you should have no worry. No, he's not going to start over a Rakpo or Kerrigan, but he's going to provide great depth, and I'm sure all Redskins fans would have loved for either one of those two guys to have been a little bit fresher late in games last season. They addressed their offensive line by selecting Morgan Moses from Virginia in the third round. While he's not very polished, It's going to take a little bit of work. There's a high upside here. Great news is he has to play right tackle, not left. Now, if they were drafting to be a left tackle, then I'd probably be not as calm about them selecting him where they did. Spencer Long, a guard from Nebraska, once again addressing a leaky offensive line, which is much needed. Robert Griffin III, he's this, who knows what he can do if he's able to stay, to operate out of a clean pocket. One of their best picks in the fourth round was Bashad Breeland, outstanding corner out of Clemson. Another guy, versatility here, and he's tough as nails. Redskins fans are going to love him. You got D. Hall, you got Emerson, Terry Porter. You throw Breeland in there, it's wonderful, honestly. Ryan Grant, wide receiver from Tulane, not the fastest guy, runs decent routes, great hands, which you watched a lot of Redskins games last year. Hands were an issue at times, so that was a great pickup. My favorite pickup, I think, was Mr. Seastrunk, Baylor's outstanding running back. So you're getting Seastrunk and Alfred Morris. I think it's going to be a wonderful combination, and I think a lot of folks are going to love it in Washington. They got Ted Bolser in the 7th round, a tight end from Indiana. Just think he's going to be a solid tight end. You got your dynamic tight end. There's nothing wrong with getting another guy. Zach Hoger, a kicker. So a lot of fans are up in arms about that. But, solid draft. And as I said, we're going to be doing another hangout later this week or maybe at the start of next week where we share the actual grades for the draft, and that one will be much quicker. But I want to thank Warren Beasley again for taking some time to join us this evening. I want to thank you guys for tuning in and checking this out. And, stay up with the site. Great content each and every day. Visit mymindonsports.com.